right, hello and welcome to a special edition of KBO Chats Live. I'm Sam Pascal alongside Erik Halterman, and this is our special Olympic preview, breaking down everything you need to know for some Olympic baseball action coming your way very soon. Our agenda today is to go over an overview of the tournament, what's going on. It's double elimination, but it's a little quirky, so we'll cover all that. Some players, go team by team, some guys you know and some guys you'll love to cheer for, and then of course our pick for each medal position. So diving right in here, Erik, what can you tell us about the tournament, starting here with two groups with the first game tomorrow at 11 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, so baseball is back in the Olympics for the first time since 2008. There were a couple Olympic cycles without it. It's been a medal event, I think, 5 different times. It'll be one this time, not next time, but then again the time after that, as far as I can tell. Like you said, just 6 teams, 2 groups of 3. So they play technically round robin within the group, although that just means 2 games. And nobody gets eliminated after just 2 games. What happens is after the group stage, we go to effectively a straight double elimination tournament. The 2 winners of the groups get a bye essentially into round 2. If you win that game, you're already in the semis. You're 1 game away from the gold. If you lose, you go down to that loser's bracket and you're still very much alive. The winner of the loser's bracket will come back in and play in that gold medal game. If you finish second in your group, so probably that's going to mean you beat 1 team and lost the other, you're 3 games away from the gold medal game. If you finish third, though, you're also still 3 games away from the gold medal game if you win out. But with just a single loss, I believe you can be eliminated.
Yeah, it's a little unusual how this kind of all plays out. But yeah, 6 teams. And here, going back just a little bit, we have the rankings. We'll go through each one, but this is the world rankings. And in terms of the scheduling, I believe Dominican Republic and Japan are opening it off, and then we're having Israel and Korea for game 2. In terms of stadium, in terms of venue, anything to note particular in that variety? I know in the KBO, you get the dome action, but then you get some rainouts too. Anything in that variety people should be aware of?
That's a good question. I haven't seen anything saying that there's major things to worry about. There has been some humidity and heat affecting some of the sports. I think it was like in the 90s with high humidity in many of the events. So I haven't actually seen the venues for all of these games. That's something I should probably have looked up before we start this show.
No, I didn't mean to surprise you there, but there we go. So that's the overview, group stage, and then you move into the knockout round. So moving now into our team-by-team rundown here. First, starting with the host country, Japan. Most notable name on the team. You remember Yankees ace Masahiro Tanaka. Japan has not won a gold medal in the Olympics, but they have been very successful internationally overall. Erik, what's the biggest strength of Team Japan here heading into these Olympic Games?
In a way, it's kind of everything. One thing to note about this tournament is that MLB didn't shut down for it. So nobody on a 40-man roster will be at these games. But the MPB in Japan and the KBO in Korea did shut down. So both Korea and Japan are sending what's effectively all-star squads from their leagues. Japan is a very well-rounded team. They're getting nearly all of the country's top talent. No Shohei Ohtani, no Yu Darvish, a couple other players play in MLB, but most of the best Japanese players in the world still play over in Japan in a league that's considered, halfway between AAA and MLB. The best players in Japan are absolutely MLB caliber players, and the players on this team will be the best players in Japan. So I would say probably the majority of this roster would fit in just fine on an MLB squad. Wouldn't necessarily be stars, but most of them would at least stick around. And that's just simply something you can't say really for any of the other teams in the league. So really, really deep everywhere. Pitching is something that I would imagine a lot of these teams are going to struggle with. As you get lower down the levels, it just comes harder and harder to find reliable pitching. Japan has a ton of it. Masahiro Tanaka, as you mentioned, is probably the only name that people who are just MLB fans will know on this roster. But there's plenty of other talented arms. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is a 22-year-old righty who is among the best young pitchers, among the best pitchers, period, in Japan. Leads the league in strikeouts, and he's second in ERA with a 1.82 mark. He can get this fastball up to 97 miles per hour. He's got great strikeout stuff. Would not be at all surprised if we start hearing about him looking to come over in another 5 years or so. Another pitcher to check out is Kodai Senga. He's a guy who's been trying to come over or wanted to come over the last few years, but he's still under team control. His team, the Hawks, are, I think, famous for not letting their players get posted. So he's not able to come for another couple of years until he's a free agent, and the move can't be blocked. He's barely played this season, missed most of the year with ankle issues, but he struck out a ton of guys last year, strikeout rate just shy of 30% with a 2.16 ERA. So he's got a ton of talent. It'll be interesting to see if he can showcase his stuff on the world stage here in anticipation of a potential future move to the U.S.
Yeah, some great pitching on this team, Japan. Yeah, when this first, the MLB barometer here for the Olympic preview section was written, it was plus 160. Now at Japan, they are big favorites at minus 125. And it makes sense when you look at the talent they have. And Yamamoto, got to mention that he does lead the Pacific League in innings pitched. So he goes a complete game. Maybe he could. We'll see what happens here. That's for Team Japan. And again, they are opening things off against the Dominican Republic. Moving on.
I just want to touch on some of their hitters, too. I think we should give Japan a little bit of extra time because they're the most talented team here. Lots of veterans who have done quite a ton over long careers in Japan. Middle infielders Hayato Sakamoto and Tetsuro Yamada each have an MVP trophy. Yamada in particular is a guy I wish we would have seen in MLB. There's still a chance maybe he comes over eventually, but he had 4 30-30 seasons in a stretch of 5 years and cleared 300 in 3 of those. So he does everything as a second baseman. Has lost a bit of contact and speed, but still an excellent player. And then a young guy that I'm excited to watch is first baseman Munetaka Murakami, 21-year-old who already has 91 homers at the NPB level. Was a huge swing and miss guy with big power when he broke into the league as a 19-year-old a couple years ago, 36 homers, but struck out over 30% of the time in a league where they make a lot more contact. But he's already cut his strikeout rate by about 10 percentage points and is second in the league with 26 homers. So he should be a guy who's definitely fun to watch at the plate during this tournament.
Yeah, a lot of talent on this team, Japan, as the favorites. Again, opening it off July 28th on the Wednesday, but for us in America, that is Tuesday night. Moving on now into the second team in Group A, that's Team Mexico. They're ranked 5th in the world rankings. And you can see they have a decent variety of former MLB players. Oliver Perez and Adrian Gonzalez are the most notable of the bunch, but do not forget about Ryan Goins and Danny Espinosa in that infield mix there. Impressions on Team Mexico here in Group A. They will have to play Team Japan, which will be a tough matchup.
Yeah, definitely one of the underdogs here for sure. The top few Mexican players play in MLB. Guys like Julio Urias, Alex Verdugo have played for the team before, I believe, and are ineligible because they're on 40-man rosters. So we're left with mostly a team full of players who play in Mexico, as well as a couple guys in the minor leagues and affiliated ball. It's, I think, the oldest team. The average age over 31 years old. So there's some experience, but it's also just a bunch of, Mexican League veterans with the occasional guy like Adrian Gonzalez, who has maybe the best MLB resume in the tournament, close to it. Ian Kinsler might be able to top him. We'll get to him later in the show. Over 2,000 hits, though, at the MLB level, over 300 homers. Hasn't played in affiliated ball since 2018, though, and didn't even play professionally at all the last 2 years. But he's now playing in Mexico for a team called the Mariachis de Guadalajara, which is one of the more fun baseball team names I've heard of. He's hitting 340 there, so he's clearly still got it and should be able to get some hits off of lower-level pitching here. But when that's, what is he, 39, something like that? Very, very old Adrian Gonzalez is the best guy. Like you said, Ryan Goins, Danny Espinosa, sort of journeyman MLB guys who were never elite talents and aren't in the big leagues anymore. Goins is a AAA guy in the Atlanta organization. Espinosa last played in the MLB in 2017, now plays in Mexico So not a lot in terms of big names there when you're getting to Goins and Espinoza as the guys that you're bothering to highlight.
Yes, yes, indeed. Definitely a dark horse team here for Team Mexico. In case you're just joining in, this is a special Olympic preview edition of KBO Chats Live. We so far talked about the tournament structure, how there's group stage and then there's knockout stage, and then Team Japan. We are currently talking about Team Mexico right now. In terms of their pitching, any final notes you want to mention? I saw here that Hector Velasquez, former Red Sox pitcher, was on this team but was removed. Any concerns in terms of the pitching staff for Team Mexico?
Yeah, and in terms of the resumes, he probably had one of the better resumes on that pitching staff. Had thrown 166 MLB innings with an ERA under 4. That's pretty good for this tournament. So their top pitchers might be guys like Manny Benuelos and Teddy Stankovic, who both have recently come back to Mexico after pitching in Taiwan. I think they had a good amount of success there, but Taiwan, the CPBL is a league that's generally considered high A-ish. So guys who are quite good high A players sprinkled in with a bunch of, again, Mexican League veterans should give you an idea of the talent level there.
All right, that's what we're looking at for Team Mexico. Got the hat here from the World Baseball Classic a few years back. Rounding out Group A, team number 3 here on our list is ranked number 7 on the world rankings, and that's the Dominican Republic. They have some former major leaguers. You know, you got Joey Bats in there. Actually have him as a Philadelphia Philly. Forgot he was on them on that team for a little bit. You have Emilia Bonifacio, Melky Cabrera in that outfield group. But really, Erik, tell me about Julio Rodriguez as the big star here. Somehow not on the Mariners 40-man roster, and he could carry this team as he's one of the best prospects in baseball. Yeah,
he's quite possibly the guy I'm most interested to watch at the whole tournament, besides maybe a few of the guys on Team Japan who I don't get to see often. But Rodriguez, he's RotoWire's James Anderson's number 2 fantasy prospect in all of baseball. For a non-fantasy look, Fangraphs has him top 10, I think 9th overall. 20-year-old who's already having success at the AA level. He's got 967 OPS between high A and AA this season. Should make good contact and has big raw power, 70 grade raw power, according to Fangraphs. Again, should do some of everything. Should arrive quite soon, too, given that he's having success at age 20. Would imagine he starts out at AAA next year and magically learns how to play defense in the end of April and gets called up late in that month. That's more or less the pattern that was laid out for him. If you remember that Mariners executive who leaked all of the team's plans that we all already could have guessed. It seems like they've been planning to call him up late April of 2022 for quite some time now.
Indeed, and going back to kind of the overall team for Dominican Republic, they do have some legends, the Lindum legends. That's the Dominican Winter League. That's been very popular. I know Cespedes BBQ covered that quite a bit when it was going on in the winter. Anyone notable from there beyond the big names of Bautista, Cabrera, and Bonifacio?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing to note here is if you break down the teams by what league they're based in, as you can see I did there, the largest group is free agent. There isn't a high-level summer league in the Dominican. There's, of course, the Dominican rookie leagues for the prospects and then the Dominican Winter League, as you mentioned. So a lot of these guys are guys who pretty much only play at the Liga Dominica, something like that, the Winter League. I think Juan Francisco is a guy that Jordan Schusterman of Cespedes Family Barbecue highlighted as one of the most fun guys to watch. He had some MLB experience quite a long time ago, but he's a very large corner guy who still hits dingers in his, I believe, late 30s. So maybe we'll get one or two of those. But he's kind of emblematic of the level of this team. Again, this whole tournament is 2 effectively all-star teams from Japan and Korea, 2 very strong baseball nations in the Dominican and the U.S. who just don't have any of their top guys there, and then 2 complete underdogs in Mexico and Israel. The Dominican, you might think as an underdog pick to win it all, given, if you definitely associate them as one of the strongest baseball countries in the world. But it is mostly a team of Juan Francisco's, team of Jose Bautista's. He hasn't played professionally since 2018. So it's a team of old veterans who I think are probably mostly going to be there having fun, unless Julio Rodriguez drags them to maybe a bronze medal or something.
Yeah, we'll have to see. And that rounds out Group A. Again, that's Team Japan, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic in Group A. Moving on to that powerhouse you mentioned, South Korea in Group B. Leading off here, there are quite a few players on here. Actually, enough to do a whole show about, which we do every week on Tuesdays here on RotoWire's YouTube and Twitter page, KBO Chats Live. But kind of the overview here of some of the top players, of course, Baek Ho-gong and Yuji Yang here we got some video highlights of. But can you tell me about the military service thing? Because there's actually a lot on the line for these guys on Team South Korea and what they can do if they can secure the gold medal.
Yeah, I don't know if it's everyone or all males in South Korea have to do, I think it's 2 years of military service, except if you medal at either I think it's the Pan Asian Games or the Olympics. If you medal, that counts as public service and you get out of that commitment, which if you're trying to make a career as a baseball player, not leaving for 2 years is really going to help you. The South Korean team actually is the defending champions. Of course, that last Olympic baseball tournament was held back in 2008, but South Korea won it. They knocked out Japan in the semis and Cuba in the finals. Guys actually won both those games. Kwang Hyun Kim, who now pitches for the Cardinals, was the winning pitcher in the semis. Hyunjin Ryu, the Toronto Blue Jay, won the gold medal game. So it's possible that we have the next Kwang Hyun Kim and Hyunjin Ryu pitching at this tournament here. And these guys, again, will certainly hope that they manage at least a bronze, which shouldn't be hard at all, given that, again, they're sending a KBO All-Star team. There's a few South Koreans, like the two I mentioned, also Ha-sang Kim, who won't be able to play because they play for MLB clubs. But the bulk of the top talent in South Korea plays in the KBO, which means they will be playing at this tournament.
Yeah, barring Hyunjin Ryu, you got to look at the pitching for this team, guys that we talk about on a weekly basis on KBO Chats Live. Won Jun Choi, great find for the Doosan Bears, an ERA under 3 on this season. Woo Chan Shaw, maybe not quite on the same level, but another guy we've talked about for the LG Twins. Do you factor that in at all, saying that they're probably the second best in terms of pitching, and that could go a long way in this tournament that mainly has, is relying on veteran bats on these other teams?
Yeah, I think so. I think they are the second most talented team at this tournament, and they have basically every pitcher they sent is having success at the KBO level, which, again, generally considered between AA and AAA, except that in reality, the best players are at least, fringe MLB level guys, and the worst are, low A or so. But the team they're sending here is a team full of the best. Many of these guys, I think, wouldn't be completely overmatched at the MLB level. A couple pitchers that I want to highlight are a couple young guys we could theoretically see stateside in 5, 6, 7 years. Woo Jin An, 21-year-old righty for the Kiwoom Heroes. I believe he's got the top strikeout rate among qualified Korean pitchers, or Korean pitchers who've thrown at least 70 innings in the KBO. He's got the top strikeout rate. He's got a 94 mile per hour fastball, 87 mile per hour slider. That's MLB quality stuff, and I think he may well have an MLB future if he stays healthy. Already has a 3.24 ERA at age 21. And then Yuli Lee, a 19-year-old lefty for the Kia Tigers, one of the only bright spots on that team this year, has a very similar strikeout rate, has some control issues, but again, still 19 years old and has a 3.89 ERA already. So two guys who, very, very early in their career still, but they might be names you remember from these Olympics 6-7 years ago when they're Detroit Tigers or Kansas City Royals or whoever they're pitching for.
Indeed, that's what we're looking at for Team South Korea, the leaders of Group B. Here, moving on to Team USA. Here we've talked. We haven't talked a lot about them, but there's been a lot of news about Team USA. I want to first feature actually some of the more storylines, some more characters on Team USA, and that starts with shortstop Eddie Alvarez. See here, he made his debut with the Marlins last year in 2020 during the COVID season in front of no fans. He carried the flag then for the Olympics for the Team USA in the opening parade. But he's actually a former Olympian, a speed skater. Pretty crazy there for him. You also have Edwin Jackson on the pitching staff for this Team USA that has played for half the teams. I mean, in Major League Baseball, quite the good representative for Team USA and Major League Baseball. And of course, then Bubba Starling, former multi-sport standout out of high school, was going to go play for Nebraska before the Royals drafted him with one of the biggest signing bonuses, which made him forego his college career. Not quite a huge star, but still some interesting characters on this Team USA. Erik, what do you make of this group?
Yeah, I've been trying to reason out how to peg their level compared to the Japanese and Korean teams, who again are true all-star teams, close to the best talent you get from those countries. Obviously, effectively all of the best, several hundred American players will be ineligible for this tournament since they're on 40-man rosters in MLB. But then again, the kind of Americans who head overseas and have some success in those leagues in Asia, probably they're not too far from the level of these guys. I mean, how different is, say, Bubba Starling from Aaron Altair, who's been a star for a couple of years with the NC Dinos in Korea, or say Leonis Martin, who's having quite a lot of success in Japan after being mostly a fringe guy for a few years at the MLB level. So I don't think they're that far off if they do win. I mean, again, it's baseball, and the tournament can only be as short as 5 games, 6 games, maybe if you lose one. It wouldn't be at all crazy, I think, for them to even upset Japan, although I'd have to say they're underdogs. But again, most of these guys, I think if they played in Japan or Korea, would have successful seasons.
Yeah, and you see here a lot of from AAA, that experience, and of course a couple from some other backgrounds. Is that factoring in at all? Are you seeing that maybe a group that's kind of had some more experience trying to rally around and get a medal here? Is that factoring in at all? Kind of the veteran presence?
Yeah, there's a ton of veteran presence. Edwin Jackson, you mentioned, played for 14 teams, is now playing in the Atlantic League. Scott Kazmir, another veteran who was a great story early this year when he made his comeback after last pitching in 2016. Didn't really do anything, but it was cool that he made it back. And this is an audition for these kind of guys. If they have a great tournament, we probably will see them pitching down the stretch, at least in low leverage innings at the major league level. David Robertson was a great reliever for a long time until he blew out his arm pretty much right after signing with my Phillies in 2019. Hasn't pitched at the MLB level since then. I believe he's also recently joined the Atlantic League in preparation for this. Then Todd Frazier, who's been representing the U.S. at the international level since 1998 in the Little League World Series, was on the Team USA from Toms River, New Jersey, who won it all back then. So it would be quite a story if he could also win it now, 23 years later. I'm sure there'll be quite a few side-by-sides of that Little League team versus this one.
Yeah, indeed. The Todd father there trying to I know he had some big moments during the qualifying game, so trying to keep that momentum now into the actual games in the group stage coming up very soon. Last team to go over, rounding out.
Can we just note a couple of the prospects for Team USA real quick?
Yeah.
A couple guys I want to touch on, because this is not just a team full of Todd Fraziers. Shane Baz, righty in the Rays system, has reached AAA, can touch 100, has struck out nearly 40% of batters across the 2 highest levels of the minors this season. He'll definitely be one to watch. And then Tristan Casas, first baseman with huge raw power, who's a 20-year-old, I believe, in AA in the Red Sox system, are the two biggest prospects who should get the chance to play alongside those late 30s guys just auditioning for one more shot.
All right, so we're looking for Team USA, some veterans, but also some younger guys in there. Wrapping up Group B is Team Israel, probably the biggest underdog here. They have quite the collection of players here. I think it's the most. You got retired guys, you got free agents, you got Pecos League. That's barely independent ball. But you got Atlantic League, AAA, with one of the probably most accomplished guys outside Adrian Gonzalez with Ian Kinsler. And, of course, one of my favorite guys in this tournament, Ty Kelly. You can see a tweet here, one of my favorite players to follow on Twitter, as when MILB Transactions tweeted out that he was released, he, of course, hopped in there saying someone should hire him because he's super good at it to play baseball professionally. So Team Israel kind of sneaking in the tournament. What do you make of this underdog team here?
They're definitely an underdog, but they're not a complete nobody on the World Baseball stage. They've made 2 straight World Baseball Classics. They actually finished 6th in the most recent one, and they had to beat Netherlands, who's another team that does some stuff on the international stage to qualify for this tournament. I think the top end of the roster would fit right in with Team USA. I mean, guys like Ty Kelly, like you mentioned, is he really any different from some of the fringe guys that we just talked about? Ryan Lavarnway, not sure exactly how to pronounce his name, but he's sort of the same journeyman catcher. Danny Valencia is on this team too. Guys who you wouldn't be at all surprised to see as, these are the guys I recognize on Team Mexico, Team Dominican Republic, Team USA, any of those. So it's the top end of the roster, I think, looks like anybody else. But then, as you noted, we've got guys from the Picos League. We've got a guy from D2 college ball. We've got a guy who plays in the Czech Premier League here. My favorite thing, though, is the most represented group for Team Israel is retired. There are 5 minor league coaches on this team. Most of them have played professional ball, but they're not professional baseball players anymore. But that's not even the most exciting. The most exciting is Shlomo Lepetz, who's 42 years old. He has a season of professional ball back in 2007, which is the only season of the now defunct Israel Baseball League. So 14 years ago, he was indeed a professional baseball player. He's now a music director at a winery in Soho in New York City. And he'll be on the same team as Ian Kinsler, who's a fringe Hall of Famer. So gotta love the Olympics. Gotta love those 2 guys as teammates there.
Yeah, in terms of range of Hall of Famers to just regular dudes, I think Team Israel would definitely win the gold for that. You mentioned Danny Valencia. I remember him with the A's, traded to the Mariners. He was an interesting bat when they got him from the Blue Jays. But that's going back. That's some old time A's a couple of years ago. But yeah, Team Israel, interesting group here. Man, so that's what we're looking at. 6 teams here, 2 groups, Group A, Group B, and now moving into our projections here. We have our little gold medal emojis there I drew. Japan, the big favorite here. We talked about them at the beginning of the show. They are the all-star team from the best league that's shut down right now. And South Korea next. Actually, not next. Team USA is next, but South Korea in terms of the next best league that's fully shut down, that is sending its pretty much top stars. Where do we go with the pick here? Maybe even go Team Israel plus 3,000, the underdogs. Is Valencia going to turn into a Todd Father performance and just dominate this? What's going to happen here?
Yeah, I think the gap between Team Israel's odds and the other stragglers, the other underdogs like Mexico and Dominican Republic, that's too big. I don't think Mexico has a 4 times as good of a chance as to win as Israel. Again, that was a team full of mostly veterans of the Mexican League, which is not a particularly high league. Team Israel has plenty of fringe quad A types, probably past their prime quad A types who are just triple A types at this point. But that talent gap is not as big as it looks there, even to the Dominican Republic, which, as we talked about before, this is not the Dominican Republic. This is mostly free agents who only play Dominican winter ball and guys like Jose Bautista who have retired. So I think in terms of odds, in a sense, Israel has the best. I mean, they're not going to win. This team, they're not going to beat the Japanese, NPB All-Star team. But it is baseball, even you get the best teams against the worst teams. It's never much more than like an 80-20 kind of proposition. And the tournament's short. Again, just 2 group stage games. Then you play somewhere between 3 and I think 5 games in the knockout round. I don't think Team Israel is going to win it, but I don't really think they're behind Mexico and the Dominican by very much. So just in terms of odds, a tiny bet on Israel seems like one of actually the better propositions. Although, again, definitely not picking them to win.
Do you see them as a better chance of, who's looking at the group stage here, do you see them as a better chance of winning that Group B, just kind of a surprise pick if you beat Korea and beat USA somehow? Or do you see them maybe making a run in that losers bracket kind of in the second half here? making a run.
Yeah, man, it would surprise me if they won the group. I guess with just a 3-team group, it's possible the 3 teams all go 1-1, and then by tiebreakers luck into being only 2 games away from the title. Again, I don't see it happening. They could lose by 10 against each of those teams. But given that they don't have to win that many games in the knockout stage, not terrible. I think, again, the fact that I really think there's 3 good teams, Japan, U.S., and South Korea. The fact that 2 of them are together with Israel in that Group B definitely does make it tougher for Israel among the underdogs. But Mexico and Dominican Republic, I guess one of them will beat the other, and presumably they'll both lose to Japan pretty handily. So whoever wins that game, again, doesn't have too hard a path through the knockout stage. But again, not enough talent there that I think any of those teams are really going to stick with the Japans, Koreas, USs of the world.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then what is the gold medal pick? That's the schedule again for group stage coming up on Wednesday/Tuesday night, depending on where you are in the world. Who is going to be the gold medal, though? You're going with Team Japan, the big favorite. Where are we going to go for the gold medal?
I can't pick against Japan. So I do think it's going to be Japan. And I'm going to give Korea the silver. I think, a KBO All-Star team, I think, is better than Edwin Jackson and company. It's not super clear. When I pulled up the odds yesterday for this article, I think it was much closer between Korea and the U.S. I bet the U.S. has probably had a bunch of Americans betting on them just because it's fun to root for your country. I think those 2 teams should be quite close in odds, and I think Japan's odds, I think, have moved way too much. So while I do think Japan's going to win it, their odds right now imply that they have well over a 50% chance of winning the whole thing, or at least somewhat over a 50% chance. That doesn't strike me as accurate. So if I were to place a bet on the winner, I think I like Korea at plus 500 a lot more than Japan at minus 125. I do still think Japan should be favored. But again, this Korean team upset Japan back in 2008. I do think they're going to meet at some point in the knockout round, and it's baseball. Even if it's, say 60-40 in Japan's favor, the gap in odds between those 2 isn't accurate. So Korea's my pick for a bet, even if Japan is, I think, the most likely winner.
And for the third place, for the bronze medal, we're going to go with Team USA. I mean, Bubba Starling almost played college football. Where are we going to go for the third place winner?
Yeah, I think Team USA is comfortably better than those 3 at the bottom. Again, USA, like Dominican Republic, is a great baseball country who has none of its top talent playing. But I think the guys who are left over with the U.S. are enough of a step better than the guys left over with the Dominican that I think they'll beat them for that bronze medal game. There's a very real chance they beat Korea in the knockout round and end up with a silver instead. And again, it is baseball. They're not terrible underdogs against Japan, but I don't like that plus 300 well enough, I don't think.
Yeah, not a huge fan of that, especially when you look at the all-star team that South Korea and Japan are sending. That is all we have. We do have one question, though, about totals. We mentioned the pitching staffs generally going to be behind the veteran bats. You mentioned the 42-year-old basically just coming right off the street, could give up, 16 earned runs. And we see someone in the KBO with a ERA over 100. I mean, what are we talking about here in terms of totals? Are we thinking these are going to be like 12 to 10 games, like the Samsung Lions against the Lotte Giants? Or are we thinking more like 2 to 3, with, a solo shot from Julio Rodriguez as the main offense?
Yeah, I think we mostly expect overs. I think there's a lot of shaky pitching throughout most of the rosters. Again, I think Japan has quite a few strong pitching options. So in games that they're involved in, they probably keep it low scoring on their end. But I think you could pretty easily see some like 12-2s in games Japan's involved in. And there's a decent chance you get some shootouts. Obviously, it's usually dependent on the pitcher for any given day, but most of these rosters don't have many pitchers that I would trust. So I would expect a good amount of runs in most of the games until we get down to those last few knockout games. Again, not playoff baseball tends to be lower scoring with teams, using all their relievers subbing everybody out. I should note, I think this is normal baseball rules, so I don't think we're getting the extra inning runner, and I don't think we're getting the 3-batter minimum either. We're playing real baseball back in the day here, some retro stuff, some pre-2020 baseball, which, again, could lead to even more batching up in the late innings of those final few knockout games. Those ones, I think, should see low-scoring games. I think the end of that 2008 Olympics, most of the games were like 3-2, 4-2, 3-1 kind of deals. So those I would expect to be low scoring, but those group stage games, especially, I think we could see runs.
So we're not expecting a complete game shutout from Joe Ryan on Team USA then.
No, but he's interesting. He was recently traded, wasn't he? So it'll be a good chance to see what he has to offer.
Yeah, they're trying something to prove. I mean, Scott Kazmir was in the majors this year, and he's trying to get back there. A decent little piece for the Giants when they need someone to pitch. So see what he has.
And again, that's the main thing about this tournament. It's just gonna be fun, seeing all these names of, hey, I remember Ian Kinsler and Adrian Gonzalez, and oh wow, this Julio Rodriguez guy, he really is something. So I'm just gonna mostly enjoy what I'm watching.
Should be fun, and that's what we're looking at for these 6 teams. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun tweets coming out at middle of the night about who's winning these. So should be a lot of fun. And that's all we got for you guys here from the special edition of KBO Chats Live, our Olympic preview. Hope you enjoyed. Be sure to check out rotowire.com/freekbo for an access of the MLB barometer and everything else KBO and fantasy sports. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. Hopefully see you back for regular KBO programming in a few weeks.
Indeed.